Okay, good evening, folks. My name is Kathy Barnard. I'm the chairman of the Wolfeboro Planning Board, and I have to get my script out. Welcome to the July 21st, 2020 meeting of the Wolfeboro Planning Board. Due to the COVID-19 crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. However, the Planning Board has jointly decided to proceed with a hybrid meeting format, allowing for members of the public and board to attend and participate in the meeting in person or virtually. In accordance with RSA 91-A:2-3, the board has 6 members joining, or 1 member joining the meeting remotely, which a public body has the authorization to allow. At this time, I'd like to take a roll call vote of all members present. For those participating virtually, please indicate why your attendance is not reasonably practical, and if you have any other individuals present in the room with you. So start with Peter Goodwin. Matt is...
I am present, and I am not at the meeting because of the COVID virus, and staying in a room for a period of few hours is something which to me is risky. There is no one else in the room.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Brad Harriman.
Present.
And Brad is the representative from the Board of Selectmen. John Thurston.
Aye.
Mike Potter.
Present.
Thank you. Von Dugan.
Here.
Susan Riplier.
Present.
Okay, thank you. And Julie Jacobs, our alternate.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Votes taken during this meeting will be by a roll call vote for all members. In accordance with Emergency Order number 12, for members of the public, this is to confirm that we are the following. Number 1, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means through GoToMeeting. All members of the public and board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the GoToMeeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-749-3122, followed by the audio access code 918-242-429, or by video following the directions on the Town of Wolfeboro website posted on the home page under the virtual town meeting login information page. 2, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting in person or using GoToMeeting. The instructions are provided on the Town of Wolfeboro website at wolfeboronh.us on the virtual town meeting login information page. 3, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or computer, please immediately call 603-391-8489 or email planningdirector@wolfeboronh.us. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Okay, so now I will start the agenda. We've already introduced the planning board members. And we do have a scheduled appointment with Paul Zimmerman. Good evening, Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening.
And you're...
Very short meetings, I shall accommodate. The good news is, I'm not asking you for any decisions tonight. I just wanted to present to you some ideas that I have regarding some issues in the community. The first issue is the poster that was posted down at Dockside, a copy of which I brought to you this evening. And as you know, the town recently spent a lot of money and doubled the size of the docks downtown. And because of that, we're getting a tremendous influx of visitors, docks, and people, boats, and pedestrians in the community. And I was a little bit disturbed that the first thing they see when they get off a boat is this photograph of the business district downtown. I think it's only reasonable to present a full picture of the community to visitors, showing them Center Street and Main Street and all the amenities of the community. I live here, and I looked at this photograph, and I personally couldn't understand it. And I just feel somewhat embarrassed that that's our presentation. So I would like to encourage you to upgrade this photograph, include the Center Street area, make mention to the liquor store, the banks, the Foss Field, the pickle courts, Wright Museum, the rail trail, all the wonderful amenities we have that would attract their attention, including the Chamber of Commerce. So I would like to encourage you to take another visit of this photograph and present a more accurate, realistic concept of the community to our visitors.
Okay.
Thank you. The second item would be drive-through restaurants. I'm asking the planning board what your reservations are regarding drive-through restaurants. As you know, drive-throughs are legal for banks, drugstores, gas stations, hospitals, but not food. In most cases, you can get faster food at a drive-through than you can in a bank cashing a check. So my question is, what are the problems with drive-throughs? Dunkin' Donuts has been here for a long time. I've never seen an issue with the Dunkin' Donuts business model. Wolfeboro has a tremendous influx base of service industries. The lawnmowers, the caretakers, the carpenters, all the contractors. This is a big economic factor in the community. And they have no place to have a quick lunch. And we need this desperately. If you have issues with the concept of the drive-thru or the appearance or the looks, let's try to identify those and perhaps we can resolve those concerns. As you know, I've placed warrant articles on the ballot twice, and in both cases, the planning board did not support the warrant article. So I think the results and the analysis of that result are a little bit misconstrued because the voters here have a tendency to support the agenda of the planning board. Because I know you all work hard on it, and they respect what you do, and they adhere to your suggestions. I would like to suggest that you have a meeting and discuss what your concerns are with drive-through. Ask me or a few other business people to come in and look at them, and ask if you would be willing to support a warrant article supporting drive-through restaurants, so we could get a true vote of the community. If the community then turns it down, it's a dead issue. But let's have a warrant article that's supported by the planning board and see where it goes. In short, I don't see any downside to it. We have restrictions on lighting and setbacks and signs, stacking. Right now, people can drive into Clark Plaza and have pizzas delivered to their cars. What difference does it make where the car is relative to the business? So, in leaving you, I'd like to suggest that you review your concerns with it and invite me back to address those, and I'd like to have you support a warrant article on the ballot. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments, John?
Do you think it's unfair for you to have a drive-through and other restaurants just do their normal business? Do you think it's unfair to those other businesses if they have other businesses in
Johnny,
town?
I can't understand you, I'm sorry.
Do you think it's unfair to the other businesses who have other sub-shops and so forth in town if you open a drive-through restaurant?
That's a very interesting, sensitive question, but usually business generates business. You can take an example of an antique store. You have one antique store, they do a small business, you get 2 or 3 in a row, it all generates more business. And that's what we're trying to do. These contractors, these vendors are desperate for a place to have a quick food for lunch. And that, bringing them here, if it's busy there, they're gonna go someplace else, it generates more traffic. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Just a second.
If you have a moment further.
Yeah, let me see if there are other questions or comments.
I might have a couple, but
Okay,
I
go
don't
ahead.
want to jump in if someone else wants to say something first.
Go ahead, Mike.
2 comments. First comment on your first point. Can you hear me?
I can't understand.
All right, can you hear me a little better?
Yeah.
Okay, if nobody on the board objects to my speaking this way, thank you. To your first point, I've never seen this map of Wolfeboro before. When I looked at it and I read your comments on it, I find myself in complete agreement with you. It favors it favors Main Street and downtown. It does not include Center Street. That is a thriving business part of town. There is the Wright Museum there. This map has a red arrow pointing to the Wright Museum. The Wright Museum should be on this map. I believe this map should be redrawn. Second point, drive-through restaurants. This is the planning board. This is not the wishful thinking board, good idea board, business booster board. We do not recommend articles of the sort that you proposed without having done study ahead of time to see the impact townwide and district-wide on the proposal. Both times you presented these warrant articles, neither time, I should say, was that study done. Neither time did any representative behind that article come to the board and say, let's do a study on traffic flow, density, district placement, lot appropriate sizes, and so on and so forth. That was not done. In my opinion, that's why I did not support either of those articles. I'm not against drive-through restaurants. Clearly, 1/3 of the people who voted on this article was in favor of one of them. So there's some interest in the town for it. But as a member of the planning board, I can't just simply accept the petition warrant article for one particular district favoring one particular person's properties without any kind of study having been done ahead of time. So I'm in favor of your suggestion that if this board is also in favor of it, that the idea be studied, but not in the way it was presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Okay,
So-
other,
Yeah, my principal concern is based upon the master plan surveys. We've had 2 since I've been working with the board. We had one in 2007 and then another one, I think it was 2019, we had a survey. And both of those surveys, the townspeople, the majority, were not in favor of fast food restaurants. And maybe it was the way the question was phrased, not positive, but I remember distinctly looking for those statistics. So my opinion was that the townspeople weren't in favor, and therefore we're representing them. So that's my main stumbling block.
Well, the warrant article, on the bottom line, is not recommended by the planning board.
Right.
So I'm saying, let's put one on that's recommended by the planning board and see what happens.
But the planning board represents the people, and the people are surveyed from time to time to make the master plan. And so far, they haven't been in favor. So,
I would like to add that the fact that people are serving pizza out of their cars at this time is a time when things are not normal. There are changes to the way that the planning board is and the town is dealing with outside eating areas because of the coronavirus. And so just because things are being served outside in front of a pizza place, pick up in the car is not an indication of how perhaps we're going to be able to deal with things in the future.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anyone else? Okay, Paul, we'll put this to a discussion and then we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an action item. This is the appointment of Bob Lolman from the Budget Committee to the CIP Committee. So the Budget Committee did have a meeting and has recommended to the Planning Board that Bob Lolman be their representative from Budget to the CIP Committee. We've worked with Bob in the past. He's been a very good member. And I think
I'd be happy to move
you
that
agree.
the
Okay.
planning board appoint Bob Lolman to the CIP committee as the budget committee representative.
Okay, and I'll second that. Any discussion? Oh, okay, we have to do a roll call vote here. Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
Thank you. John Thurston?
Yes.
Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Von Dugan?
Yes.
Susan Replier?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
And Kathy Barnard, I vote yes. Okay, on to the next item. The next item is public comment. I don't see any member of the public. Is that correct, Matt? There's no member of the public on.
That's correct, and I did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting either.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good. And, okay, we'll continue for other business. And the first item is to continue the discussion of the CIP document project voting process. We talked about this at our last meeting, and we have had some communication, Matt and Mike and myself. And I think basically what we've come to is that if the planning board is okay with this, that we would use 3 criteria and recommend just the first year projects. And in this next CIP, it would be the projects to be done in 2021. And so we would vote on all of those projects. And Mike, can you read what we agreed to? We agreed to recommend, not recommend, but there were 3 criteria we were going to use.
You instructed us, me, Kathy, and Matt to get together and try to figure out the wording that we 3 recommend to the board. The wording we recommend is a proposal from a department would either be recommended or not recommended on the proposal in the document. The criteria for recommendation will be the following. 1, were the data presented sufficient to establish the project's urgency? 2, were the data presented sufficient to establish the project's needs? And 3, were the data presented sufficient to establish the project's relation to needs indicated in the master plan? Those 3 criteria are right out of the statute establishing the CIP, setting up what sort of criteria should be used by the CIP to make decisions about what to include on the CIP. So if you remember from last year's CIP, it's a long list of projects. In the future, starting this year, with the current year's projects only, not the out years, but only the current year's projects, there will be under each proposal recommended, not recommended, with a poll. Recommended 10, not recommended 1. For informational basis only, to the consumers of the proposal of the capital improvements plan, which are the selectmen and the budget committee, just for their information. The entire capital improvements plan will be voted up or down, yes or no, by the entire committee at the end of all of the presentations and we've done our deliberation. So when we present the proposal to the town, it will be recommended, it probably will be recommended, and within each project we'll have a sub-category how the committee felt about each project. More than likely, each project will have a unanimous recommendation because department heads don't willy-nilly present proposals without having thought them through and without having been able to show some urgency and some need. But in case, and as we discussed last meeting, this has happened, a proposal is made which seems to the committee to lack some substance, we can indicate that opinion in the specific recommendation without jeopardizing the entire capital improvements plan by having an up or down vote, which is a negative.
Okay, and Matt has indicated that he will be the one that determines how it is consistent with the master plan.
I'll make a recommendation to the committee for their consideration, but I will work with the department head to make sure we try and do that, as I've done in the past.
Does the town manager have input on this also? I mean, on the form, there had been last year a box to tick relation to master plan, and then perhaps a sentence or two one could add to it. Since the town manager is signing off on these forms, will he be signing off on its appropriateness for the master plan?
I think ultimately that comes to the CIP committee to make that determination.
Not the town manager.
I don't believe it is the town manager. I think because the committee is the one that's defining whether or not it is in compliance with the master plan, I think it's ultimately the committee's recommendation that, you know, that makes that determination. I don't think it's the town manager's authority to decide whether or not a proposal is in compliance with the master plan.
That's a good change then. Okay, thank you, Madam.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you, Madam
Thank
Chairman.
you. So I'm expressed some discomfort with the idea at our last meeting, but after further discussions and as long as, and we'll be making it very clear that people need to look at the 3 criteria when they're recommending or not recommending the CIP members. So, and then we're only going to do it for the first year projects where the department heads putting a lot more study, work, and thought into those projects than possibly the ones that are further out. So, so I'm much more comfortable with this change, and I think that it will be a positive one.
Madam
So,
Chairwoman,
anybody?
one question.
Yeah.
Does this, assuming the board votes in approval, will this require a change in the rules of procedure?
I was thinking about that. I don't feel that it does because the rules of procedure do not spell out how exactly each project will be handled in detail. So I think the committee has adequate latitude without an amendment to the rules of procedure. And I was actually going to offer that I didn't even feel that a vote was necessary this evening unless you feel it's necessary, but I don't believe the rules need to be amended, Mike.
Then
Oh, okay.
So I'd just like some clarification. This is the committee voting, the CIP committee voting. So let's say it comes out 5-3. We at the planning board get the whole package and say, yes, whole package, or no.
Correct.
Yes,
Correct.
right.
Yeah, we recommend it to you, to us, rather. CIP committee recommends it to the planning board. Planning board approves the plan. It then gets distributed to the consumers of the plan, the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee.
Okay, other questions? Issues? Okay. Matt, do you think we should take a vote on this? This change in, this procedural change, then when we present it to the CIP committee, we can say that the planning board has reviewed.
I think that's probably wise if you want to come to the committee with a very clear recommendation. I think a vote is a good idea.
Okay. Okay. Mike, do you want to make a motion?
I'll move that the planning board approve the change in the procedure for recommending, beg your pardon, that the planning board approve the capital improvements programs committee's procedure for analyzing each proposal by including the allowance of making a recommended / not recommended vote by poll of the members.
Okay, and I'll second that. And I just wanted to add to Vaughn's comment that actually I think this will be beneficial to the planning board when we come forward with the CIP, because usually we just say, here it is. If there are a couple projects that may have some negative votes, I mean, that would be an opportunity for the planning board to then further explore that issue and possibly make some recommendations.
What would happen to a line item if it fails to get the majority?
It remains part of the overall plan.
Right.
That way, if the majority of the CIP committee feels that a proposal fails for one of the three reasons given and indicates that in the plan, that comes to the planning board. The planning board is going to be voting on the entire plan, not the individual pieces of the plan. But the planning board will see that there is some concern over one particular part of the plan, which, like Kathy said, might engender further discussion and analysis of some sort, or a recommendation to the consumers of the plan overall. But the planning board will be voting up or down on the entire plan.
So conceivably, the CIP would reconsider their position of putting it on the master plan if it didn't have a majority vote?
No, the CIP doesn't have any voting or veto authority over any of the proposals given to it. These are coming directly from the department. The CIP only makes recommendations to the selectmen and the budget committee. That's all we do.
And the planning board who then makes the
Well, we come to the planning board in this, but I'm sorry, I left the planning board out of the procedure.
But I think it will give us an opportunity to, make some further suggestions to the selectmen or the budget committee of saying, hey, this project, and then list some issues that we may have. So I think that it may add more meat to the process.
The planning board is the caretaker of the master plan. And the project is presented to the CIP, which is not entirely in harmony with recommendations in the master plan, or includes a proposal which is not part of the master plan. The planning board will be, with this new procedure, alerted to that fact, and then we'll be able to discuss that prior to recommending the plan to the consumers. And then maybe when we do vote to recommend the plan to the Board of Selectmen, we'll be able to include a codicil. We notice in proposal XYZ that ... And that would then allow us to exercise more concern over the recommendations and the impact of the master plan on the actual town process of putting proposals forward for capital investment.
Can I just suggest that, the people working on, as board members or as members of the CIP committee, They put a lot of work into what they're doing. They are making judgments which they feel are correct. And I think that what is proposed is going to help allow those views and that work to be shown more clearly.
Right, yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, so any other questions? Then I'll do the roll call to vote on the motion that has been made and seconded. Peter Goodwin,
Yes.
John Thurston,
Yes.
Mike Hodder,
Yes?
Vaughn Dugan,
Yes.
Susan Replier,
Yes.
Brad Harriman,
Yes.
and Kathy Barnard, I vote yes. Okay, thank you very much, folks. And we start our CAP, we're just so psyched about that.
Here we are.
Starting next week. Okay, the next item is the proposed parking ordinance revisions. Okay, so Matt has sent us a cleaned up version of the parking ordinance that we discussed in the past. So, Matt, do you want to go ahead, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And this is the same version that the board saw at an earlier time, but I wanted to review this with you just to sort of keep it fresh in everybody's mind moving forward as we move into the zoning season. I'm going to take my mask off for a second so I'm a little more clear. I wanted to quickly walk through this so that everyone has a fresh set of eyes on this, and so that if we recognize any issues, we can make some adjustments tonight, or at least send me back to the drawing board on some of the recommended changes that we have in the ordinance. I'll go through this very quickly. If you have questions, please stop me. Either Mike, Kathy, or I can weigh in on why specific changes are being recommended, or we'll try our best to based on our discussion that happened several months ago. But again, please just do provide feedback as we go through this, because this will be a recommended zoning ordinance amendment in 2021 per the board's work plan. We analyzed each separate section of the existing parking ordinance, particularly in the context of whether or not specific sections needed to be moved to the site plan review regulations, which would obviously give the board increased flexibility to waive portions of the ordinance, or regulations rather, if they see fit in specific site plan applications. The existing system is very rigid in that it is in the zoning ordinance, and it requires a variance if one of the standards that are shown within this ordinance cannot be met, and that has created some challenges in the past. And beyond that, there are some sections within here that were rather unclear and in some cases redundant that we wanted to clarify, and I'll get into some of those. And again, on those, please, Mike, Kathy, do add if I miss anything. We reviewed first the purpose and intent. And I apologize for the small font, but I did do track changes here. We identified a few items, particularly C and D, as well as E, 2, and 4, that we felt were a bit redundant, particularly because they exist clearly within the parking section of the site plan review regulations already. So again, please do recognize there's another section that governs parking on those non-residential multifamily uses, but we felt that those C, D, and then E, 2, and 3 could be removed because they didn't particularly apply to the section to remain in the zoning ordinance. Issuance of permits, section 175, 129. We had some debate about this, but ultimately found that in the end, a parking analysis is necessary before a permit should be issued, and therefore, although it's a bit sort of, it's pretty clear that this already exists within our process, we felt it was important just to keep it in so that if there is a challenge of a change of use or something of that nature, particularly in the downtown core, that we have the ability to point to a section of the zoning ordinance that, again, demands that parking review for a change of occupancy. One of the primary changes was within the next section, section 175, 130, changes or expansions of use. This particular section, before the modification, dealt specifically with the central business district, which is our real downtown core, and offered parking alternatives for lots that were not able to provide adequate parking on site currently. Obviously,
What are you calling the real downtown? We just had an example here tonight that wants us to include the whole Wolfeboro business area.
Sure, yeah, and I shouldn't have used that kind of loose language, but it's just that central business zoning district really going from Pickering Corner down to really just sort of past the Yum Yum Shop and Walker and Varney, and then back towards the freight shed, obviously, which is our downtown core. And it's bounded by the Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District, the Bay Street Limited Business District, and the residential office institutional overlay, and the Village Residential District. But yeah, it's really, I shouldn't have said that, John, thanks for the catch there, but it's really just this very core area in the downtown area, but not including the peripheral areas like Bay Street, Wolfeboro Falls, and Siren Street. Obviously, in a lot of that area, in many cases, parking is lacking on site. We have a lot of existing non-conforming uses that go through redevelopment or are developed into new uses entirely. And in many of those cases, think about the application for the pavilion or the Yum Yum Shop. On-site parking is either non-conforming in nature or is lacking in its entirety. But obviously, a good deal is made up in the way of public parking lots or other surface parking lots that are in close proximity. In some cases, even there are private agreements in place between multiple entities that allows for parking to take place. And in the end, parking in the downtown area generally does function. Certainly there are issues during peak demand times, whether it's July 4th, midday on Saturday, or if it's at night during the fireworks. We know we have parking issues, but generally parking capacity in the downtown is functional. So the existing ordinance before the proposed amendment was very unclear about what happens when redevelopment happens on a property. Is the site required to come into full conformity with the ordinance? Is it only required to come into full conformity under certain circumstances? Or are there certain exemptions and alternatives that can be used for providing that parking as part of redevelopment? What we've done here through particularly the adjustments at the end of paragraph number 1 there, where you'll see the addition of the word expansion and the addition of the word demonstration of the availability of, we've clarified some language that functionally says, in the event that there's a redevelopment of a parcel within actually 3 districts, and I'll talk about that in a second, the applicant to the planning board has the ability to demonstrate parking availability in one of 3 ways: either on-site with additional parking, through off-site public parking spaces within 500 linear walking feet of the redevelopment property, or actually, I'm sorry, just those 2 methods. However, there are additional methods I'll get into in a few minutes that involve shared parking agreements and parking management plans, but those are really the 2 primary means that an applicant for redevelopment has in the CBD district. When we talked about this, though, we started to think about, John, just what you were saying, just what Mr. Zimmerman was saying, that it's not really just the central business district that deals with this issue and also has some public parking availability to it. In the end, when we looked at this, we felt that the Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District and the Bay Street Limited Business District, we want to bring those into the downtown area, and one of the ways that we could do that is introduce this more flexible parking allowance or system that you can use. So ultimately, Mike, Kathy, and I agreed to add in the Wolfeboro Falls Limited Business District and Bay Street Limited Business District as one of the districts that can take advantage of this parking exemption. That's a pretty substantial modification there. Kathy, Mike, am I missing anything on that?
No.
What exemption are you trying to add in for the Bay Street Limited? If you're 500 feet from a walking, from a redevelopment on Bay Street, you're in Bay Street, there's no parking on Bay Street.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So that's exactly what the exemption is that we're talking about, that a lot of the sites in Bay Street don't have on-site parking. Lucas Coffee Roasters is a good example. They only have 2 parking spaces on site, but they are able to provide parking through other arrangements with other entities in the area. Additionally, some of the sites in Bay Street and in Wolfeboro Falls are actually within that 500 linear walking feet of a parking lot in the central business district. A good example is actually Mr. Zimmerman's Plaza and the parking lot next to Foss Field. We would allow redevelopment in the Center Street area to take advantage of that parking in that Foss Field area if they felt it was necessary to get their redevelopment done. Generally what we're seeing is that when there's a redevelopment, there's a need for 1 more space or 2 more spaces. What we didn't want to do is stop redevelopment and improvement of properties just because they can't meet that strict standard of how many parking spaces they're supposed to have on site. So, John, you're right that it doesn't make total sense sometimes, I think, on some of the sites in the Bay Street district and the Wolfeboro Falls district, but generally, I think the feeling was that this will work in those areas. particularly because redevelopment will be more limited, but it will happen. So hopefully that answers your question. Kind of throwing a lot out there. Kathy, Mike, did I miss anything with that particular section? Did that cover it?
We're also looking towards the future as well.
Yes,
That's all. In addition, we're looking towards future development, future growth.
right.
So we're not writing this ordinance for the current conditions only, but also for potential development in the future.
And
And
I
I think-
particularly like the fact that this fee in lieu of parking is gone, because it just seems like a misery
It was-
to
Yeah.
have.
It was, if you notice in the original text, and this, I worked on 175, 130 for quite a long time, and I just couldn't understand, there was a logical flaw in the language, and I just couldn't find it until all of a sudden it came to me. Part of that logical flaw was fee in lieu of parking. You notice there's no fee stated. There's no fee amount.
There's also no parking provided.
And there's also no fee in lieu of parking fund set up.
Right.
So it
Right.
could never have been enforced.
Right.
But it somehow found its way into the ordinance.
Well, because there was a commitment at the time to set up a fund and to establish a fee.
Clearly,
And it was not done.
and was just simply not done.
Right,
So we had this fee in lieu
Yeah.
of parking, which no
Right.
one could take advantage of
Yes.
because there was no fee and nowhere to pay it into, even if there were a fee.
right.
But couldn't there be? Couldn't there be somebody that creates a parking area and this particular redevelopment area signs a contract with somebody else and their vehicles are gonna park for fee at that place? We called that the shuttle last time.
Absolutely, there could be. And quite honestly, we already have it in the downtown area. The Depot Square parking lot is functionally rented to businesses in the downtown area as parking for their employees. So yeah, John, we can have it. But I think one of the questions was, do we as the town want to be the ones that run that system, or should we leave it up to private business to
Yeah,
rent parking spaces out on their
Right,
own
but-
accord?
Well, the parking lot should be under the planning board review, shouldn't it?
Yep.
Because it would have trees and streetscape and,
Yep.
and that sort of buffering,
Yep,
because that's what we would want it to do.
yep, I agree.
And then we would move them forward and allow them to happen.
Yeah, and honestly, you
but
bring
this
it up.
was public parking.
Yeah.
No, I understand, I'm just
Okay,
saying
I'm
that,
just pointing that out, because that,
yeah, and I can address that a little more in the shared parking section, but yeah, I think that would be, honestly, if we had private parking lots even in the downtown area, we'd like them to be improved, so they look a little bit more like what we're trying to do with our parking lots. But right now, the Depot Square one, for example, has been a lot, I think, for a long, long time. And they just decided to rent it one day, and there's really no issue with that. It's a surface parking lot, and quite frankly, I don't know that it's our jurisdiction to.
And I thought there was a conversation at one time for fee parking in Wolfeboro, and it may happen again. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of pay for parking in downtown is, I just had a conversation with somebody last week about it, but I know there's meters are a contentious topic, but it's something that comes up, I think, every couple of weeks, honestly, and I think it will come up again, and maybe the thinking will change, or maybe it won't, but I think when we do that, we're gonna have to have a discussion about what do we do with the fees that we're collecting? Do they go towards particularly a parking lot maintenance capital reserve or something to that effect that allows us to put that money right back into the infrastructure that's actually being used? That would probably be ideal, but.
it is an idea that we picked up from other zoning, from other communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Now we're moving into the first section that the small group felt it was really appropriate to move over to the site plan review regulations, and this is the shared parking section. And the shared parking section really will be used when a use comes in that is unable to provide adequate on-site parking, that may even potentially be outside of the three districts that we were talking about before, but is able to have some agreement with another entity. Think, for example, about All Saints Church and Huggins Hospital is just an example of two parcels that may have such an agreement, where they have different schedules of the services that they're offering, and they're able to take advantage and work in agreement and use each other's surface parking lots in order to meet some parking standard. That's not actually happening in that case through a formal agreement, but we recognize that it happens on sort of a de facto basis on a lot of different properties. This mechanism, however, if moved to a site plan review regulation, would give the planning board the authority to approve shared parking as part of a site plan review application in the event that the parking standards would not be able to be met on the lot. One of the projects that kind of comes to mind is the recent Gala approval, where they were obviously improving the site parking, but they did talk about parking in adjacent areas, particularly potentially on the Wolf Trap property. Although they didn't pursue the shared parking agreement option, they could have come forward with some sort of shared parking formal agreement, and that would ideally be the mechanism that we'd work with applicants on moving forward. But again, we'd move that to the site plan review regulation to be as part of that process.
So just a question, this is all zoning, but some of it is going to site plan review?
That's correct.
And does that have a different numbering system?
Yes, so you'll see that I said to become 17320.1 in the side of the top of the second page, Ron.
Yep.
So I will give you, as I do with all the zoning amendments, I'll give you a final, large version of this so you can actually see what it looks like in both places. But these will move directly to the parking section of the site plan review regulations, which right now is very brief and basically just refers back to the zoning ordinance.
So these numbers are not accurate?
That's correct. These numbers will go away, yes.
So, in a shared parking situation, if somebody makes some arrangements with some other entity for shared parking, and after a while, the other entity, obviously it wouldn't be the church selling out, but if there was another private entity and they swapped hands and that entity didn't want to share the parking lot agreement anymore, what would happen?
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to be very cautious about. And we had a brief discussion about that, John. It's a really good question.
It's in the ordinance.
Well, and what I would say is that if it's approved, that one entity can't back out. And I'm not sure what mechanism we use for that, but I think it would.
So that would be deeded then?
It would either be a deed or a specific plan restriction or something to that effect. But I think what we're talking about is an agreement in perpetuity that could not be revoked by one of the property owners.
It would be an encumbrance on the property. The current ordinance doesn't allow for that. Putting it into site plan review gives us the flexibility to do it any way that is good for the applicant as well as for the town.
And what you're quickly going to see is that this shared parking section is not nearly as useful as the parking management plan section, which we'll get to in just a second, because the parking management plan gives the board more authority in a good way, but doesn't necessarily tie the hands of property owners in the same, in the same way that this section does. I think we had actually talked about potentially removing this even as part of our discussions, but we ultimately felt let's just keep it. It's not something that anyone will be required to use, but there may be a circumstance where it could be applicable, so let's keep it in as an option. 175, 132, location of off-street parking spaces. This is something that we decided to keep in and retaining within the zoning ordinance. No modifications here other than a reference to the site plan, what would be new site plan review regulations dealing with the parking alternatives and parking management plan, and I'll get to that in just a second. Off-street parking space design and layout, I did review this in compliance with other standards around the state. These standards are still tried and true. They meet our current requirements, or they're compatible with what is really required for a parking space and the geometry that we need there. We did clarify the language about, you'll see in item F there, that no vehicle shall be required to enter or leave a parking space by backing or standing within a street right-of-way. You'll see that the existing language wasn't really clear. We actually referenced this section a heck of a lot in a lot of different contexts, but the existing language wasn't really that clear. So we've made some modifications in that small little subsection, but no other changes we decided. Item 175, 131, no change there. That will stay in the zoning ordinance. The same goes for the marking section. And the same goes for the next two, availability of spaces and landscaping. And please just recognize that the landscaping, this is only one piece of the landscaping requirements. This is just the parking section of landscaping. We also have a whole landscaping section that you moved to the site plan review regulations last year. Then we come to really the other, I would say, substantial change, although it's not really a substantive change, but that is rephrasing the existing parking alternatives and parking management plan section to parking alternatives, keeping the same name, but really making some adjustments within item F of this section, which is on the top of the next page. And this is really getting to the shared use of parking spaces and incorporating that same language that you saw in the shared parking space section we just went through. But I would point your attention, and going back to John's question, to the preceding sections that really deal with what your parking management plan is. And quite frankly, it's a very, very broad system that allows the planning board to make reductions in required parking based on an argument made by an applicant. The applicant can make a variety of arguments, whether it be that they are not using traditional office hours, whether it be that their clientele are not using cars for some reason. It really gives the applicant a tremendous amount of flexibility to argue why they do not require the same amount of parking as demanded in the parking ordinance. Kathy, Mike, am I capturing that adequately? I mean, it's really a flexible section that ultimately the planning board would have to approve of a proposed parking management plan, but really puts the onus on the applicant to make an argument as to why they comply despite their lack of total and complete conformance to the standard.
Yeah, I guess that the thought was that one size doesn't always fit all, and moving this into site plan review gives the planning board the flexibility to look at a proposal from the applicant and see whether it's practical and feasible and appropriate, even if it doesn't meet the requirements that used to be in the ordinance. Put them into site plan review, where we can then accommodate an applicant who doesn't meet what would have been a restriction that it just remained in the zoning ordinance.
I love the idea of the flexibility. I am a little concerned about F2 down here at the bottom. Like, how do we know if some business changes and it says automatically terminate? So now we've got a business without enough parking. Like, how does that get controlled?
You know, Vaughn, I'd actually like to get back to you on that, because I think that's a really good question. I don't think you can have an automatic revocation, so that scares me a little bit too. Why don't I look at that and get back to you? And I don't know how you would even administer that, to be quite honest with you. That's my greater concern. You have to really track that very closely.
And I think deeds get really cumbersome, you know, parking deeds. I would love to find another way to figure out how to do it.
Well, the way I'm trying to read into this is, say somebody has a facility that has 100 guests and they want a reduction. I'd rather be set on a percentage, say 10% reduction in a worst case scenario, and then if they can explain some other hardship or something, then they can get another reduction. I mean, that's the way I'd like to. I don't, just for somebody to come up to us and say, I just want a reduction in my parking spaces, isn't going to hold water to me. I mean,
It wouldn't hold water to any of us, John. We'd have to have justification for whatever percent he wants reduced by.
yeah.
You know, the maximum is 50. Anything up to 50, he has to prove that he has a good reason for that. As it stands now, he doesn't have that flexibility. Puts it into site plan review, he can then make that case. So I find that flexibility, like Vaughn says, is one of the benefits of moving it into site plan review. I'm just not sure what the problem is with F2 remaining in site plan review, assuming that the business terminates, the new business moves in, it doesn't have a parking plan any longer because it's a new business. It comes to the planning board and says, oh my goodness, nothing else has changed. We just put the new name in.
Well, the new business may want to use all of their existing parking, and the old one that was sharing it is out of luck.
Then we renegotiate the whole deal.
I don't know what teeth.
Yeah, we don't have the,
Yeah, I'd like to just see if there's a better way to do that, though, because I think that we just may not be alert enough to what's happening, you know, if a property is transferred or there's some termination. I think there might be a better way to do this. I do want to look into it. Because I agree that it would work if it worked perfectly, but in the event that we don't know about that change happening, a use continues, and the parking is not adequate on site.
It's a small town, Matt.
No, I know, but it could be too late, quite honestly. You know, the deed could have been rewritten, and then the rights are gone, and then we're left with what do we do with a property that truly doesn't have adequate parking. I think it's a worst-case scenario, but I'm just wondering if there's a different way to memorialize the approval than through this type of system.
Okay, so you're going to take another look
Yeah,
at
I
it?
can take a look at it. That's a
Okay.
good question.
All right.
So I have a question. Is a former building that hasn't been used, would that suffice as a parking area? Because it was once a building business with a parking area?
So,
You mean
John?
like there's no building now?
It's still private.
John, so you're saying you've got a building that has a parking area around it, and
Say for instance, across from Napa, the building, the old True Value.
yep.
Somebody wanted to buy that and use it as a parking area. It's been out of use for more than a year, but it was a parking lot, and it is a parking lot. What happens?
I think that in that case, it's been out of use for more than a year, but the use hasn't been abandoned because the use is conforming in that zone. So,
But the use is a parking lot now.
just a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And are they renting out spaces?
They're gonna use it to shuttle other vehicles from other places and use it as a parking lot.
So it seems almost
That's
like
not
there
a
would have to be
permitted
some
use.
agreement in
Is that-
place.
That's not a permitted use.
A parking lot for transit, basically?
No, what we're talking about, say a business wants to shuttle vehicles to this business that's in the business district.
Yeah, I don't think that is a permitted use, so I don't think it would be allowed.
So isn't that contrary to what we're trying to accomplish here?
I think you could do it if you
No.
had the permission of the owner of the property. You can't just presumptuously take use of somebody's parking spot.
I'm just saying town-wise though, if somebody's, that building down there, somebody says, okay, Lucas Coffees, they make arrangement with the girls, and this is speculative. This is not anything I know nothing about. This is hypothetical. And they wanna use it as a parking lot. Is that, what are we gonna do?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because
It's availability, it's parking, and we're talking about parking.
They're going to do it on the QT, or are they going to come here and ask for permission, or what?
so
Well, they're gonna come here and ask for permission, and we're gonna say, no, you can't use that parking lot, because it's been out of business for a year.
Well,
no, I don't think that would happen.
permission?
I don't think that would happen. So I'm thinking what would happen. So let's say that today we find out that the people who work and some people who are even using, going to Lucas Coffee Roasters are being told to park at 1 Bay Street or whatever it is there.
This is hypothetical.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's really, but I don't know that that's a violation because unless the private property owner says, I don't want them parking here. So I don't think that's a violation.
No, that would not be a violation. As long as he doesn't exceed the number of parking spaces, he's fine.
Okay.
I think that's okay. I think that's okay.
I'm just trying to propagate a discussion here because there's, people talk about where they're gonna park down there, and if they have an opportunity, then somebody can go to another place and park.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what we're saying, particularly because we're saying generally people find a parking space.
Because you're talking about Bay Street, okay?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay. And ideally, we're talking about Bay Street as a potential walking corridor in the future. So do we want to discourage people parking at 1 Bay Street and walking down to Lucas Roasters? And I think the answer is no. I think that's okay.
But I think we have to be careful about property rights.
Exactly.
Right.
The True Value owners still own that parking lot, so as long
That
as
would
it's...
be, that would be a discussion with them as their,
Right.
as an owner and an owner.
Right.
I'm just talking this as a process. Say an owner goes to the other owner and
Yeah.
they want to make a deal arrangement between themselves. I'm not saying somebody can send somebody over there and just park at their parking lot. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to say if a building is out of service for more than a year and it's a parking lot and the owner of another place wants to make a deal with the owner of another building and there's a parking area there, even though the business isn't in operation, can they use the parking area?
I think they can. I think they can. Yeah, I do. There's an
How are you
existing,
going to stop them?
there's an existing approved plan on the site. It has a parking lot. I think they can use it. I don't think that's an issue. Where it would become an issue is down the road they come forward and they say, oh, I've got all this parking and it's on that other property. And that's where we would say, well, no, you don't. I understand that you've had this arrangement in place, but that's not a legal arrangement. That's good that it works for you right now, but you can't use that to do an expansion of use, for example. You know, that's where we get a little trickier. So unless it's permanent.
Because that's essentially what you're talking about with shared parking.
Yes.
Well, you're talking about shared parking in case of a site plan review. In the case the scenario you proposed, it's Mike Hodder and John Thurston get together and I say, you can use the lot on my land because I'm not doing anything with it right now. That's never going to come here.
Right.
That's right.
So that's just between us.
I have a thought, though, Matt. You're talking about buying and owning and deeds, but did you think about leases? You have a company that comes in and all of a sudden they need a lot more places and they don't have it.
So
What happens when leases change from company to company, but the owner of the building stays the same with that shared agreement?
yeah. So Julie, can you give me a hypothetical of something happening like that? Like, you're saying the lease
Yeah,
would
because
be.
you're saying, okay, so you have a small place.
Yep.
Okay, I'm in a small place, and I only have 3 parking places because that's all that the landlord said that this specific space needs. But my lease is up, somebody else moves in, they have more foot traffic, they need 6 places. But they only have 3,
So
That's
because,
between him and,
and it's
between,
a shared thing.
that's between you and the owner of the building.
Right.
The owner of the building has a certain number of parking places that he has on his lot. How he apportions them among his tenants is up to him.
No.
It's not redevelopment.
no.
Let's not.
so
not-
it provided.
It wasn't in the building when I had. Each particular unit had its own, we had to go individually, each particular unit had its own parking.
Oh, okay, can we kind of stick to the ordinance?
So just
I don't
address
know if
that.
this
Yep.
relates to it.
I would just say
think
that
about it.
it is provided that the parcel has the required parking spaces and they're approved, and provided that the demand for parking is not going up because of the change in tenant, then ultimately, it's not the planning board's authority to decide who can lease what number of spaces. It's the private property owner's right. So, you know, what I'm thinking about in my head is, let's say that our parking ordinance demands 10 spots for retail use. If the property owner only wants to lease the person 8 spaces, we are, I hate to say it, but we're out of that. That's up to them. Does that answer your question, Julie? I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
just
really
want to
up
make
to
sure
that's
you're
not a point.
thinking, you know, own and lease. Just make sure it covers both.
Oh, okay, let's move on.
Well, I'll just get to the last change, and that is I did review the existing permitted uses in the zoning ordinance, and I went through the existing uses in the parking, in the parking standards table, and some of the permitted uses were not reflected here, so I did add those in. You'll see museums, community services, banks and financial institutions, contractors' yards, those have been added in. Manufacturing, oddly enough, we didn't have any manufacturing definition, parking standard at all. and then remove some others that weren't in the ordinance defined anywhere. And just to be clear, if there is a use that's permitted that's not shown within this table, we would go to the Green Book for the appropriate parking standard, which is sort of the Bible for, parking standards and that sort of thing, the ITE. So, this should be comprehensive, but in the event that it's not, we do have something else we can use to give us guidance.
Madam Chairwoman,
Yep.
I've got some suggestions for you, Matt, on this table. On the second page, third down, business, trade, post-secondary, what are they? Schools?
They are schools.
Then add the word schools in there. I would suggest that you take those those four, business, trade, senior, elementary, daycare, nursery, and put them under a heading called schools and child care. I would suggest that you move manufacturing to the business section. I would suggest that you make a new heading, hospitals and health care, and put hospitals and congregate care and dedicated elderly housing under that, unless you want to leave dedicated elderly housing as a heading all of its own. And on the following page, you have lumberyard, horticultural, self-storage, and warehouse. Move them to business. Then you have some kind of order in this, because right now it's just a hodgepodge.
Okay. Are you all set?
Yes, so I'll make some amendments. If you have questions after the meeting,
Well, I was just going to see if people have other questions, or do we want to keep moving ahead with this? I mean, I'm assuming we do, but I really think we need to have a public meeting on this.
okay.
I would like to see Vaughn's concerns on F1 and 2 solved before we go to public hearing.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Kathy, you're just talking a general input session, correct? A general input session?
Yeah, I mean, we may have some other things that we want to have at that session, but, I mean, if people are going to be dead set against it, let's find out ahead of time.
Okay.
And address their issues, I guess. Being that I am such a peace-loving person, but I think we want people to be comfortable with this.
Yes, and I think,
Because-
I would just,
It is a pretty major change.
it is a major change, but it's clear that when the committee worked on this, and we can agree that they got to this point, but then at the last minute, there was just a subtle change. So we're not totally changing it, but we are definitely putting in some very important words that functionally do make a big difference.
Yeah,
I think the business community might accept this, possibly, because we're allowing them flexibility
right.
to talk rather than saying, these are the rules.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily thinking of the business people.
Well, these are the ones that's going to be effective, most effective.
Okay,
In the central business district, Wolfeboro Falls and Bay Street.
okay.
I think the primary context would be that there's generally concern that there's not parking availability downtown.
Yes,
And that this will make that worse.
right.
But you have to weigh that against potentially prohibiting redevelopment of some structures that might really need some help against that potential parking issue that you have in the time of year. So that's going to be the kind of topic.
So, foolish question here, where are we gonna permit parking? Off-site?
It's going to be street parking or the public parking lots that are existing.
We're not gonna zone an area where people can build. Yes.
Well, that's,
We're talking about parking.
it's not a permitted or special exception in any zone, I don't think, so we would need to include it. And I would, yeah,
Why do we
right.
want to do this?
Well, I mean, it should be in Central Business District, Bay Street, or
So you get,
Wolfeboro Falls.
yeah, so you got the people that are at Mass Landing down there, that parking lot squeezed right tight. Again, they had the old animal place over there next to the church there that would have been a prime parking area. People could have had a gate, they could pay to go in there, they could leave their vehicles in a protected area all weekend, and then they could go out to their island. They could open up spaces in that parking lot for other people who want to walk the trail and do other things. I mean, let's try to free some stuff up here and think positive for our future.
Are you talking about already existing lots?
I'm talking about existing lots that could be converted into a parking lot that could service parking for overflow.
Okay, already existing lots.
Yes, already existing lot, but it's not there's not an area that's permitted to build a parking lot. It's
I
not
understand.
permitted.
But it is a lot that's already there.
There was a house there. Any lot could be, any place could be a lot. You tear the house down.
Yeah, but I think the idea of commercial parking lots as a permitted use is an interesting one. And, you know, you could have some standards, like it has to be 200 feet back from the water or something like that. You could have some standards in place, because right now, they're not permitted. So I think that's something we should look at, particularly if we're talking about.
So, the Central Business District, Bay Street and Wolfeboro Falls, or just the Central Business District?
I think we should look at all three.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think we should look at all three.
Okay.
Not that the land availability is necessarily there, but
Right now, we're just looking.
yeah.
Okay, so is that okay with everybody?
What do you mean,
Okay.
just
Yeah, I'd
looking?
like public input on that.
Excuse me?
I'd like public input on that.
Yeah,
What do you mean by just looking?
we haven't decided, we're going to get some suggestions, bring them back to the planning board.
The only interesting thing is that I don't think I've ever seen parking lots as a permitted use. And I don't know, Kathy.
Well, that's why I think we need to look into it.
Yeah, but I think it's an interesting question
Yeah,
because
right.
I think we know they exist in a ton of places, but I don't think I've ever seen them as permitted use. So I want to see how we would do that.
Yeah, right, well, that's what I meant, Mike. I mean, I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but.
I mean, we allow self-storage,
Yeah,
and a vehicle is basically self-storage in a different form.
okay, we will,
So,
Okay.
just a question, I know that we have a zone out Route 28 that has quite a lot of parking lots that are largely vacant. Can they be included in this? The shared parking, or because they're not in the right zone, they're not?
For sort of a shuttle service kind of thing.
Yeah, let's say you're on the trail, you just go down further.
Where are you thinking, Vaughn?
Well, I'm just thinking of like what used to be Warren's Heating, and there are lots of parking lots out there that are very empty. If they wanted to share their lot, it's not in the right zone.
I think we should look at the feasibility of that though. Like who would really want to take advantage of that property? Because I know there have been efforts to have business owners and others park outside of downtown, but they haven't been successful. So
Yeah, my focus would be more into the core of the downtown area where people go out on boats and stay overnight on the island and, I mean, closer to town.
And this is the reason this is a huge priority is because we're going to be talking about improvements downtown, but those improvements might come at the loss of a parking space here and a parking space there, and maybe a couple spaces in other locations. If we're going to do that, first question we're going to get is, well, okay, where are you providing parking then to make up for that? So I think it's good to look at this, and
yeah,
I can tell you I've been approached by 2 to 3 property owners over the last 2 years about surface parking lots in this area. So I think it would be a good thing to have some more guidance on.
Isn't the parking alternatives and parking management plans district-wide, town-wide? It's not just restricted only to the Central Business District? Wolfeboro Falls and Bay Street.
That's correct.
Yeah, so it would in that case fall in.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so we will get back to you folks once we get additional information. Okay, so we all set with the parking for now? All right.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, on to the next item, and that is Patty Cook's email that I or Matt, one of us, forwarded to you. Patty Cook had called me, or, yeah, I think I talked to her, about the new signs downtown on the, what was Berkshire Hathaway, in their windows. And the light, she was very concerned about that, and she has in the past expressed her concerns about the similar display in Melanson's real estate office. So I asked Matt to take a look at the issue. I guess she contacted, then she followed up with an email. You know, is this a sign issue or is this a lighting issue? Well, I looked at the sign ordinance, and I feel, Matt doesn't agree with me, but I think we do have some issues with the sign ordinance. The special promotion section of the sign ordinance talks about only covering 25% of your windows with advertisements and temporary advertisements, and it seems that advertising properties is in real estate would be temporary. Our sign ordinance also says that you can only have them illuminated during business hours if you have lighting. I also looked at the neon light or whatever it was, and the definition says no neon light tubes. So I'm not sure if there's some flexibility there, if this type of lighting would meet that. But anyway, I figured, I told her that we would talk about this. She said, then sent the email that we forwarded to everyone. Also, there's a section that talks about signs may be illuminated by exterior light sources. So it seemed to me that, you know, maybe there are some issues. And so I just wanted to have you folks take a look at this and see if you have concerns and how you want us to proceed.
I got some comment here.
Okay?
I too.
I reached out to Mr. Melanson and asked him about his display.
Good job.
He says his lights have been in place since 2016
Yep.
with no complaints and approved by the codes officer.
Okay, all right.
It was approved by the codes officer. Interesting.
2016. I
Yeah.
know this conversation was brought up with Rob when he was here,
Right.
and I know that there was some tension there, and I know that it was whatever the parameters were approved, and that's what I know.
Okay.
That's what I was told.
All right, I also know they've been there since 2016.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Yeah, because you heard me every time I drove by.
we had asked Rob to follow up.
Julie, can you speak closer to your microphone?
I
'Cause
said
can't
because
hear
she
you.
heard me every time I drove by. As I pointed and said, those are lit signs at night. That's not right. So
And
you
we-
heard me every time.
And we had a warrant article also a couple of years back about the Coke sign, at Wolfeboro Louis Pizza, and the Vitales. There was a a situation down there where the codes officer wanted to go down and they wanted to shut the Coke sign off and the open and close sign off. And there was a big pushback from the people in the town of Wolfeboro. They're very upset.
A big to-do.
And so I remember that also. So we better dance pretty softly when it comes to that. I agree with Patty on the lights, though. The white lights, they are obtrusive. I don't find that those lights are going into the sky. I would call that more of a hue as you walk by. There's definitely other lights around that are shining into the sky that are white lights that, no, I don't like the direction that the white lights are going in. I'm not happy, and I am scared to think what's going to happen going into the future because everybody's grabbing those things and they're bad.
Well, the LED packs that go mysteriously just get added to buildings, those are especially offensive because they really project light out, especially toward the lake. It's blinding.
I mean, I'd rather be orange or yellow lighting favorable myself.
I agree with you. Sodium lighting is far preferable.
Yeah, and they don't have to be on 24/7. They can be motion sensitive or off at 11.
Well, there is a provision in the sign, I think it's in the sign ordinance, it says that the lighting can only be on when the business is open.
Well, Kathy, that's just on a home business. I did look at that at one point, and it said you had to shut yours off at 8 o'clock. But what was happening is people would just flick on their barn lights to make sure it was lit up.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, this was, I told Patty that we would discuss it, and so.
May I add something to that?
Other thoughts?
If I'm...
May I add something to that? There's also several large screen TV monitors that are mounted on walls so that they can specifically shoot through the windows at night for people. And they don't necessarily have advertising running on them now. It's a little bit gentler so they don't get bad-mouthed, but it's intrusive. You see it when you drive by. You see it when you're, making a corner. I think it's really, tipping your toes over the edge of the line just a little bit. I think that, at this point, we should, tap people on the shoulder again and say, do you remember, you shouldn't be doing that. Can you back up a little bit?
You're talking about like residential televisions?
No, these are
Okay, well,
downtown.
I guess what we need to do is focus on I guess Matt has already made a determination, but is there any thought that people want to add to the ordinance or?
If I can offer my opinion, I don't think these are signs. I hate them. They're garish, they're ugly, they're obtrusive, and they don't belong here. That's just me personally. But they're doing nothing more than what Black's does with their window display. They're advertising their wares for sale. They're doing it in a particularly horrible way, I think, but they're not signs. This is what we have for sale. Just like it's a shirt or a book or a souvenir that a tourist can buy. It's lit, just like the wares in Black's are lit, and in Wolfeboro Casuals are lit, and any other place that has something for sale is lit. I don't like them. I wish they had better taste, but I don't think that they're signs, and I don't think that we have any authority over them fooling around with them, because they're not signs.
Okay, well, there is a provision in our sign ordinance that says that temporary signs are illuminated only during business hours.
But these aren't signs. They don't advertise the business. They advertise the business as products for sale. That's my opinion. I don't like them, but I don't think we have any authority over them.
Okay, well, I'm
I
just
do
talking
know
about
that
the
they were
ordinance
lit.
right now, not what people like and what they don't like.
No, like I
All
said,
I'm
I don't
trying
think
to
we have
do is
authority over them.
to find out
under
if
the
we
ordinance.
think that these are in conformance or if there should be changes in the zoning ordinance. That's all I'm saying. I'm not-
What should we do? What should we change? What would we change?
I don't know, this is a discussion.
Okay, I'm just having a discussion with you.
Okay.
I think part of the
all right.
problem is this
Well,
new
is there-
technology, and we don't have anything to reference it with. They're new, they're cool, let's use them.
So,
Okay. I
Doesn't
think
our
the-
ordinance say
I
that you
think
can't
the-
allow light to spill out beyond your property limits? I mean, that's, we could start sending letters saying this light is definitely spilling out beyond your.
The ordinance, there's a misunderstanding that the site plan regulations say that you can't spill any light. It doesn't say that.
Well, it has to be directed down.
Yeah, right, and I think part of the reason that was done is because in the downtown, it's virtually impossible to have lighting that doesn't go on another property, but it does require full cutoff shielding, there's no question about that, if it's an exterior light. I think that you could even argue that these are more of a lighting violation than they are a sign violation, but Kathy, I agree that the window coverage is an actual issue. The window coverage is more of an issue, but
Yeah.
my opinion is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think you should have a small committee maybe look at this issue. And the reason I say that is because I get complaints about lighting very often, and increasingly so in recent years, the recent year and a half. I think a committee maybe should look at the illumination ordinance and the zoning section and the site plan review regulations to make sure that those are actually what you want. I don't think it would take very long. I think a group of 2 people, and I can help you get that done, could take
That's
a
a
look
good
at
idea.
it. And maybe in the end, no changes get made. I mean, maybe that's the ultimate verdict, but I think if we're having disagreement about whether or not what we're looking at is a violation, the ordinance could be clearer. And maybe that's something that this group could work on, but it's ultimately, yeah, it's up to what you'd want to do. But
Yeah.
the complaints are getting more and more frequent. There's no question about that. I think
on that particular location,
no, but I have heard several complaints about that particular one. But Ms. Cook has sent me messages in the past about the post office,
Yeah.
the Huggins facility, which we did remedy ultimately, and some other locations as well. So these complaints have been sort of circulating, but in some cases it hasn't been clear, and in other cases it has, but in some cases it hasn't been clear, is it a sign violation, is it a lighting violation? And I think if we could clarify the regulations to deal with it, I think that doesn't hurt anybody.
Well, and we also have our own, electrical department that sometimes replaces bulbs with bright white bulbs that we could, ask them not to buy any more white ones.
Yeah, because they are available now.
Oh, they
Yeah,
are,
we
good.
could.
I mean, I look at this, and 3 out of the 4 points that she makes talk about white light, the bright, harsh white lighting. 3 out of these 4 points. That's really the crux of what she's complaining about.
It's
And
not warm.
I agree with her.
Yeah, totally.
I have one of those new bright white lights right outside my house now.
You do.
I do. I lived here 37 years and I never had that. Now all of a sudden the sodium is gone and I've got a bright white street light outside.
Pretty bright, isn't it?
They've
I
got
asked
all the way up
MED,
North
please
Main
not to put that
Street.
in, and they put it
Yeah.
in anyway.
So like Vaughn just said, I mean,
But-
it's going to be a shared effort, but I think something should be done about the harsh, bright white lighting.
I was coming home with my daughter last month, she was home for a day. We're driving down the street, and she said, wow, what's with this new street light
Yeah.
out front? And I'm like, well, they put a new one up.
Maybe we should look at our lighting ordinance then and see if it's
Oh,
appropriate.
okay. Well, just so everybody's clear, though, our sign definition is pretty broad, because it talks about products or service information, so. And then the sign ordinance then goes on to talk about the temporary signs where you, like down at the shoe store, they're having a sale on sandals. And so we do have some specific issues in the sign ordinance, but the issue with the sign ordinance is that it really has to be enforced by everyone, and that means go through the town and say, this is a violation, this is a violation. And we just don't have the capacity to do that.
We
But
could.
That's how a sign ordinance should be
We could, though.
enforced. It needs to be enforced uniformly. and consistently, so
Yes.
everybody is treated the same.
Absolutely. That's part of the whole thing. I agree. It needs to be enforced uniformly.
Well, and we could also start perhaps having a little file of letters that are the good neighbor suggestion letter, you know, and just at least say, you know, the planning board has been made aware that there are people who, you know, feel that this light is too bright, too white, and it's detracting from the character of the town. Would you consider, you know, with the ones where it's not, just so that at least it's there, you know, and maybe it goes every year. I don't know.
Do we want to hold a...
I would,
I'm sorry, Peter, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Peter.
I would suggest that the brightness of lights coming out of buildings or wherever should be dealt with in a similar way to noise ordinances. And, you know, we have ordinances which say you aren't supposed to make a whole lot of noise. Well, I think that it is the brightness of the lights that bothers people. It is not the actual fact that the lights are there. And, you know, that goes along with what goes on with some of now the new street lights that are put in. They're too bright, and Mike suggested he now has one outside his window. But I think it is the brightness of the lights, and therefore similar to the decibel level, that is really the issue.
Should we hold a public information session or a public hearing on lighting problems in town? Just hear what the public has to
Or
say?
send out some sort of a letter, like Ron is suggesting, just making friendly suggestions to
Or
folks.
even put it in the paper.
No,
What about putting something in the paper? I mean, you could,
or putting something in the
you
paper.
know,
Okay, and
please consider.
and just so everybody's clear, I'm not suggesting that we do an all-out enforcement on signs. I'm just saying that that's how it would need to be done. And I think we have other pressing problems also that we need to deal with in town. So you have to establish priorities.
So we'd like to talk about the town's lights and the theme that she talks about also.
And the what?
She talks about the town lights,
Right.
K Park and the Foss Field, and the theme that the town should undertake. And I agree with her.
Yep.
We should undertake, like the hospital, Huggins, how they put their lights. I agree, these lights that was just put up down there at the pavilion at Foss Field. The lady spoke that night and asked about the lights that lives across the street. I said we were going to be consistent. I hope we would be compassionate to the neighbors. Are we being compassionate to the neighbors? Are we getting complaints down there, Matt?
Dealing with complaints in that area for the last 2 years, yes, I have. Yeah,
So-
it has not, we have not been,
So do we have a rolling discussion in the town government about getting the proper lights rather than the lights that have the light that go out the glass, all four sides? We just put those lights up. I can't believe that we did that.
I've got to get back to you on that. I honestly can't remember the lights down there.
The lights are the same lights that they have down at Cape Park that have the
Yeah,
four-sided
okay,
glass,
yes,
and the
yeah,
glass
yeah,
just goes everywhere.
Yeah, it's too bright down there.
Yep, and
I think Patty's right. We don't have a theme.
Yep, I agree. I agree. We have many facilities under different management, and that's not an excuse, but that's why that happens. And quite frankly, there is no comprehensive plan for how all the lights should look the same, and there probably should be.
I think we should get rid of that light that's down there for sure.
Which one are you talking
I'm
about?
talking the one at the pavilion, the new
Yeah,
one,
okay,
the one they just put up there, yeah.
I think,
Okay.
John, that
All
there's
right,
another problem down there,
by the
that's
new
why they have
building.
all the light.
Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, how do we want to proceed?
I think a group to try and come up with language about a comprehensive plan is a good idea.
I'd like to get public input, which would give us political clout before we proceed any further. I'd like to hear what the people have to say about it.
We can
And
have
if
a
they
forum.
feel a particular way, let's do what they want us to do?
Yes, because I've talked to one of the folks down in the real estate office, and he told me that they're getting a lot of good complaints. People are really have not said anything negative to them. So I think that's a good idea to have a public session on lighting and.
When I drove by the old Moods building late at night, there were tourists all around the building,
Yeah.
looking at the signs, looking at the
Right.
houses for sale.
Right.
Clearly, they were effective. These people were learning something. You know,
Right, yeah.
they weren't saying, "Oh my God, it's so blinding, I can't deal with this."
Yeah.
So there's going to be difference of opinion. We need to hear from the public.
Yeah,
So do you want a small group to work on getting a public event together and looking at the ordinance, both those things? Is that, okay, I can work with that group.
We have a public issue right now, though. How do you do that?
Good point.
yes, no, that's.
I think we can talk about that. I think there are ways to have a public session and still have people participate actively. It's not going to be the same, but I think we could even have it outside if that might be effective.
Okay,
There are options. So,
okay, I've got that on.
A recent select board meeting associated with the beaches had more people showing up online than had ever showed up in person. So it may be that being online ends up being a very fine way to deal with it.
Okay.
we can do both. We can do both. I mean, that's, yep, we can do this properly spaced and online. And I think both groups can have the same level of participation. We can get good feedback from everybody. So I agree.
Okay, all right, so we'll put this on, this is going on the.
Well, who is interested in participating? Because I'd like to, pass some direct response on to Patty so that I can tell her we're working on this issue.
I'll participate.
Just yeah. Also, I think we should ask Patty to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
I have 3 board members and I'll invite Patty.
Yeah, what about the Parks and Rec in town?
I can see if Eric Guzio can be part of the conversation too.
Yeah.
What about Adam? See, Adam? Is he the one who's going to be replacing the lights in the future?
Again, it's probably Adam and Christine because they both manage it. It's actually potentially more Christine though, because she takes care of the lights down here in the pavilion.
But she didn't install them, though.
No, but Adam doesn't either. So Rick Burns does most of that.
But I had referred Patty Cook to Christine because of the lights on the rail trail,
Okay.
the replacement, and
Yep.
it suggested that they talk. Okay, all right, well, are we ready to move on to the next issue? Okay.
Who's in it?
All right, the Affordable Housing Overlay District recommendations. This is something that Matt asked our attorney to take a look at because I guess previously she had expressed some concerns about our ordinances to do with affordable housing.
Yes, I reached out to legal counsel after, in the process of reviewing the Harriman Hill 3 condominium documents. Laura and I had, or Attorney Inspector Morgan and I had identified an issue with our affordable housing overlay district and our inclusionary zoning district. And specifically that issue was that it was not in compliance with New Hampshire state statute and the requirements for what percentage of the town is supposed to permit workforce housing. Ultimately, she did do a track change version of the inclusionary zoning ordinance. The affordable housing overlay ordinance, I'm still working with her on a couple other modifications too, but I wanted to quickly walk you through this. And I'll be very brief this evening because this item will come back to you in August. But I wanted to walk through her comments very quickly. And the major issue is on page 1 under item 175, or section 175.30, applicability, section B. And that says that This inclusionary zoning ordinance deals specifically with the village residential, and general residential district. Because of the state law that requires that at least 50% of the community by land area must permit this, those zoning districts represent a very small portion of the land area of the town of Wolfeboro, particularly because a huge section of the town is actually in the residential agricultural district. So the amendment that we're going to recommend here, although it's not shown here, is that in addition to these 3 zoning districts, we'll also include here the rural residential district and the residential agricultural district as an area that is allowed to take advantage of this inclusionary zoning ordinance, which is really a density bonus for affordable housing. This ordinance has obviously been in place since 2009. We've had very limited implementation of it. Kathy was excited when I was looking at it because she thought that we were going to make more comprehensive changes to it, but we're not doing that just as of yet, although it is part of the master plan recommendations. But we at least want to make sure that it's in compliance with state law, and that's all we're seeking to do in this case. Mike.
Okay, but this, I mean, what I thought she was responding to was also the overlay.
So that's the section that she has not. We're working on a few issues with that that actually go beyond what I'm talking about right now that we want to bring to you.
Okay.
But this, I just wanted to start with this one to identify the issue, which is that percentage issue under statute. I quite honestly had a different reading of the statute than she did, but I'm going to obviously default to council's opinion, so that's why I made the recommendation to you.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I looked over this inclusionary zoning ordinance with an eye to its practical application, and I'm not surprised it hasn't been used very much,
right.
because it's extraordinarily chilling, and it's really unworkable. How it ever could possibly have suggested that inclusionary affordable housing be built in the village residential district, I don't know, because no one in his right mind is going to build affordable housing in the village residential, which is the most expensive, short of the shorefront, part of town.
And has water and sewer, that's the problem.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to suggest that I would like to work with you closely on this, on a paragraph by paragraph review of the inclusionary zoning and the affordable housing overlay districts, because I think this is an issue that really needs to be addressed in very serious fashion now before we go on very much longer. And I gather Kathy is in agreement with me as well. I've been looking at various economic statistics here in town. I called Wolfeboro Bay Manor, the old Clipper home, and I asked them how many people are employed and how many of those people live in Wolfeboro. And she told me that they have about 120 employees there, and 11 of them live in Wolfeboro.
I'm sorry,
The reason
where is
being,
this?
Wolfeboro Bay Manor, the old Clipper home.
Okay, on Clark Road.
On Clark Road, on Clipper Drive or whatever it's called. Only 11 of them can afford to live in Wolfeboro. She has nurses in motels on Route 28 because they can't afford to live in Wolfeboro. We have a growing demographic reality here. We have around 35% of the population currently over 65. We have over half of the population over 45. And they're graying just as we are, as I am, graying even further. The people that I and they are going to need to take care of us, Meals on Wheels, deliver food to the house, do shopping for us, take care of us at the Wolfeboro Bay Manor, take care of us at Huggins Hospital, which also has a problem finding housing for its staff, are going to be growing and growing and growing as our population ages, yet we have nowhere for those people who will be taking care of us to live. Harriman Hill is the first, as I remember, here in town of this workforce housing. We need to be putting more of them in. We need to be making it economically feasible. We need to be making it profitable for developers to come in to put up multifamily housing with a percentage for workforce housing or lower income housing, we need to look realistically at the town, at the districts in the town, and say, where are these places likely to go? Wherever land prices are less expensive, where there are large chunks of land available, where they are on a state road, where they're on a town-numbered, paved, maintained road. We need to be expanding our vision. We need to be taking advantage. We need to be taking into account the way our town is changing. And one way we can do it is with inclusionary zoning and with affordable housing overlay district. Make it attractive to build this kind of housing here in town, because we're going to need it. You know, we're all going to need this. If we are committed to living here and we intend to grow old and maybe die here, we're going to need people to help us out. And another part of the demographic that's important to notice is the majority of the people who are 65 and older are not rooted deeply into the town, multi-generational. They're people who've come up here since the 60s, since the 70s, since the 80s, who have themselves and their immediate families, but no aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews to help out when the time comes that somebody at home needs help to get up and down the stairs. That population, which is coming into town all the time, retirees coming from away where their families are raised, they've raised their families and they've moved away, coming up here to live because it's a wonderful place to live, are going to need support staff. And we're not making an effort to make it easy for those people to find places to live here.
And barriers have to be removed from the regulations.
Agreed.
Excuse me, I didn't hear that.
Barriers need to be removed.
And there are a number of problems that I find here. Area median income. The median income of Carroll County is to be used as the basis for the area median income. That sounds fine, but this is Wolfeboro. We need to be looking at the median income Wolfeboro, not the median income of Carroll County. Median income of Carroll County is lower than the median income of Wolfeboro. So we need to tailor. Anyway, I don't want to go on any longer. I appreciate you're listening to what my wife calls a rant, but I think this is an important issue that needs to be addressed.
Oh, okay, let me just add that this inclusionary zoning has worked in other New Hampshire towns, so it does need to be looked at. And Vaughn and John, I can't remember if you were on the planning board. We actually hired consultants that wrote that. There was we had gotten a grant.
What year?
Oh, it was probably, what year was it, 12?
2009.
Oh, was that long ago?
No.
God.
No, that was just before us.
Oh, okay. Well, we hired consultants because we had some money from New Hampshire. We got a grant from New Hampshire Housing, and
It was right after the workforce housing law had come into place too. So everyone was reacting to it, but
So,
and so we got that far, but it's
we'll-
not been effective at all.
so back to your legal counsel's problem with the percentage. And you want to open up, what were the zones you want to open up?
so the rural residential, and the residential agricultural district. So I think what you
Okay.
might need is like
I can tell you my own feeling why I think that's why these three are on there. Again, it's because of the water and sewer.
Sure.
Right.
So,
And fire and police.
and
well, water and sewer
That's
is
why.
the density item.
Yeah.
Water and sewer is the density item.
the argument I made to council, and I may push on this a little more, is that although it's not a specific permitted use, workforce housing is not a prohibited use in any of those zones. And she did not agree with me, and I actually do want to kind of go back to her, because I'm not sure I agree with her opinion that we need to have a majority of land area. I'm not sure that makes sense.
But it doesn't really matter whether it makes sense or not. As long as we're within statutory authority, we're fine. The important thing is looking at it practically. Yes, it would be better if it were on town water and sewer, obviously for everybody around. but that's the most expensive property in town. And where are you going to find a couple of acres worth of property where you can put up a Harriman Hill operation that's not going to break the bank of the developer, that's not going to be chilling? My thought was add rural residential and rural agricultural also, but only when it's serviced by a state or a town paved and maintained road, state numbered or town paved road. So we have access, but otherwise, where are you going to attract a developer to put up a project which is going to include, say, 15 or 30% workforce housing, under market price housing?
The problem he has as a developer is he has to build a road. Then he has to build a huge septic system with all these contraptions in it that could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
He might get 2 houses off of that thing.
And where's he going to find a couple of acres in the residential or the village residential, those areas served by sewer? When they proposed the hotel to us, one of the biggest obstacles they had was where they're going to site it.
That's correct.
If a commercial giant hotel with a convention center couldn't make it work economically, how's some development with 30% workforce housing under market going to work?
The only way you make it work.
That's what I say by being practical.
Well, it's going to have to be a full subsidized situation because no contractor's building a house under $270,000 these days because he can't.
That's why we have to make it attractive to them. There are lots of ways of doing it. We can offer tax abatements as a means of attracting people in. We can offer a 50-50 deal, extend the sewer line out to where they want to build, send the water line out to where they want to build. They pay 50, we pay 50, or they pay 60, we pay 40, something like that.
I offered early on in the season, we talked about Filter Bed Road and extending the road all the way out through. There's much opportunity in that neck of the woods for housing. And I've talked about it before, and nobody's given an inch to it. We've been shut down out there. If you want land, it's out there.
There's land all around, it just has to be sensibly placed. But we as a town are going to have to be, and this is the selectmen, not the planning board, flexible with the requirements that are imposed on developers who are likely to put up workforce housing.
That's why we have a representative from the Board of Selectmen on the planning board.
That's why I'm sort of talking in that direction.
But to the same extent, you have the ability to directly impact the viability of a project by modifying the density bonus that you provide.
Sure.
So you can, no offense to selectmen, but don't worry about what they're going to do. You know, you can sort of step ahead of that, and I think, Mike, I think that's exactly what you want to do, and I think the ideal way to do this would be to have really 2 scales of density bonus. One, in the more rural area, would be likely a smaller bonus in order to prevent large-scale development out there, unless that's what the community wants. The other would be in more of the, you know, these residential districts around the community core generally, where you could provide potentially a higher bonus that would result in more compact development, but could provide more units to be developed. You know, I think of one parcel in the village residential district that's 3 acres that could be developed into a very nice cottage-style neighborhood development, but right now our zoning ordinance doesn't necessarily allow for that, and this could be used to actually get a project like that done. I wasn't aware that tonight we were going to have this conversation, but Mike, I'd like to help do that because Kathy and I have certainly been battering around the fact that this ordinance is not in good shape.
No, the ordinance is full of
I
illogical.
put this on the project list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And if we want to try and tackle it this year, that's great. I think that's fine.
I'm ready to work on it.
All right.
Because I think this is a need that's going to become more and more pressing as the years go by.
I agree.
Well,
Sorry for the dumb question, is Harriman Hill on town water and sewer? They are.
I can't hear what?
It is.
Harriman Hill,
It is.
they're on town
Yep,
water.
good question. It is.
What was it?
Harriman Hill is on town water and town sewer.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
earlier on, we had discussion where we know that Sugar Hill has been purchased by the Taylor community, and their director gave an interview in an article that said they have room to grow and headroom to expand. And I said to Matt, I was like, well, you know, they're gonna need employees. I mean, as a board, when we look at an application, we know if they're gonna build 118 units, they're gonna need people to work it. And so I don't know why we as a board don't say, where are your people gonna live that are gonna service your community? Because if we approve applications and we know there's no workers, we're only causing our problem worse.
Yeah, well, I do know that Huggins Hospital people come from Tamworth, they come from quite a ways away, so. Okay, so we're gonna work on this, Matt.
Okay, great.
Just include me in if you wouldn't mind.
I'm gonna move on to the next issue, folks, the view shed ridgeline protection. Vaughn had sent us some information. Vaughn, you wanna...
Well, what I like about this thing that, which town is it again, did Newfound Watershed,
Lake.
is that it is not all about hiring engineers and doing erosion studies, which when I first read the one that was in our packet, I thought, oh geez, that's awfully cumbersome. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of money to pay these consultants. And I thought that this one, which I forget, somebody shared a while ago.
This was at the planning board back when we were at the library.
Yeah, yeah. I
Which
thought
one
it
are you
was
referring
simple
to,
and
Vaughn?
straightforward and not super cumbersome. So I would prefer to see it take something of this form as opposed to that, you know, the engineer has to do this, the engineer has to do that, because we're already engineering a lot of things. You know, it could be any ridge line. You know, if you're on the top of any form of hill, you'll be visible. It doesn't have to be, you know, wherever these dots got put.
Matt, what do you think of this that you gave us? Because this came out of the handbook, right?
Yeah, so the 2011
Yeah.
document. Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously for me, I like it because it's,
What's the 2011 document?
the 2011 document is this visual protection district with the black box. This is the one
This thing,
that.
okay.
Yeah, it already got shut down at that.
Yeah, and I just pulled it for reference, just so you had it, but I like this, of course, because it's very clear, but it's also very expensive for property owners, I think, to actually demonstrate this. But it clearly demonstrates what is and is not subject to the ordinance. I actually looked up the Newfound Lake Association again today, and I found a new version of their recommended ordinance that I provided to you, which is the document that Vaughn had supplied. Included that on your table. I haven't had a chance to review this in detail. I think this might be somewhere in the middle, though, of what was proposed back in 2011 and the document that Vaughn had provided. It doesn't have clear requirements for professionally engineered plan, but it does require you to demonstrate where you are going to be building and how you're complying with the standards. And it recommends a conditional use permitting process, which I concur with that being the right method to use. I sort of leave this to you. If you want me to put time into drafting an ordinance of this type, I'm happy to do that. If we have an issue, I'm happy to write something, but up to the board.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to take a quote from Dave Bowers at that meeting. He said it was very arbitrary and it's discretionary from one person to another. The way I would look at this is I would include every property in the whole town of Wolfeboro. I would include boathouses and houses, because somebody that builds the boathouse just took a visual protection away from somebody else's view on the lake. I can look out, I saw a hill over there, there's a red light over there. I looked out that window, I saw another hill over there. It was like hill, ridge line, it can all be said in so many different terms. My visual is different from your visual. We're in a slippery area if we're gonna create an ordinance here. We have to be all-inclusive or not inclusive.
Well, I mean, that was one of my questions was, would this apply to all properties?
My preference would be to have some sort of, in fact, I was actually talking to John about this before the meeting this evening. I think you have to have a map that defines where the areas are. I think you have to have some sort of basis for that, but I think even when you're doing that map, you either have to do it incredibly scientifically, so nobody can argue the methodology, and then you might actually exclude some areas that people view as really important areas to protect. But I think that's the only way you could really do it, to avoid sort of, subjective bias during the process. And I think that's why they've recommended sort of this mapped approach. They used a topography analysis to figure out where the areas were. I think that's the only way you can do it. And even then, I think that may not cover all the areas that you as residents feel are the important areas to protect, and then you can't make exceptions.
Yeah, because the one that Glenn pulled out really does talk about properties on the shorefront.
Yes.
Yeah, so, okay, well, how do you folks want to proceed?
I would not recommend the planner take his precious time and work on an ordinance for viewshed protection here in Wolfeboro, because I think, and I agree with John, even if it does apply to the entire town, you're still left with a question of how do you define what a viewshed is? I've got a bunch of viewsheds from where I live. I'd like to have each one of them protected forever and ever, but of course it's never going to happen. So you have to have some kind of viewshed discussion, viewshed definition. I looked at the 2011 exhibit that Matt gave to us. I looked up the Bureau of Land Management's manual on defining a viewshed. It's scientific, it's obviously the way to go, but it's 28 pages and it's filled with references to textbooks on how to determine vegetation type, soil type, boulder type, and on and on. Newfound Lakes model ordinance refers to a municipal viewshed map, which is this topo. And that's no definition of a viewshed.
So I wonder if topo couldn't be a tool. What if everything that was literally a hilltop or a crest over a certain elevation, what was, the thing that you would see from far away, like the white sugar hill on the hill, that you can't miss it?
Well, like John's referring to Dave Bauer's quote, that's arbitrary, isn't it?
Well, no, it's very specific.
Right.
It says anything over elevation 1,000 and the following ridges and crests.
And everything visible from the top of that crest is a viewshed?
No, I would get rid of the word viewshed. I'm just talking about ridges and hillsides and crests.
So
Things that you see from a distance,
So
whether
if
you're on a road.
if you're on a viewshed, everything I can see from the top, if I'm on the crest of a hill, everything I can see is protected under this viewshed ordinance?
Nope, if you're on a crest of the hill, you're in the area of issue, so that when you look up and you see a hill, you don't see the crown taken right off the trees. There's not a gap up there. There are still trees on the ridge.
I think
So what
you two
you're
are
saying
talking
is
about something
if you are
different.
above a certain elevation, you're the one that has to follow certain procedures.
Yeah,
You are the one that has to blend in
Right.
and follow certain procedures.
and it actually wouldn't be hard to do with the topography. You just find the high hills.
Well, actually, that was the survey that Chris Franson and I did whatever year that was, when we started talking about this. And so I've still got the notes that that we took of a lot of the areas are higher.
Yeah.
So we kind of started that.
So any property,
Is there something which would be a definition of a view shed, which would be that which the public sees on a regular basis? As in, I am a boater on Winnipesaukee, I am a boater on Lake Wentworth, or whatever, or I am driving into town in an area where I can see things. And this would end up then speaking to Mike's issue, which ends up being that if I am the one who is up there on the top of the hill, if I was on top of the hills that can see all of Lake Wentworth, that would in fact impact my view shed, which would be, that's a private view shed, that's a private house that I happen to buy, knowing what I see, rather than the visitors coming to our town and looking at things. And of course, this would mean that there's impact on the area around lakes. Some of that, though, is taken into account with the Shoreline Protection Act. So anyway, it may be that there's a definition of a public view shed versus a private.
Yeah, I think what I'm suggesting isn't anything to do with, Mike's view from his house. It only has to do with seeing things on distant hills and not scalping the ridges.
So
because if I look out of my house and I look at the top of the Ospey Mountains, and somebody's built a house up there and cuts down all the trees, he would not be allowed to do that under this ordinance?
Well, he's
Because
lucky
it would
because
be-
he lives in Tuftonboro.
All right, so he's Poor Farm Hill, he shaves the top of
Yeah.
Poor Farm Hill. And I can see that he would be
There's
in
a lot he
violation.
can do. He just can't scalp the trees along the ridge.
No, this is the state law. Removing a tree is usually easy process. There's no law that says nobody can remove the trees unless they're on the shorefront areas. That's the law. It's right, I've read it, and it's right here.
But you're saying it's illegal to make this law?
No, there is no law that says somebody can't cut their trees on their own property. The only place in the state of New Hampshire where there's a law that says you can't cut the trees, cannot cut the trees, is in the shorefront residential area.
But we do have town zoning, and this would be a town.
Yeah, you could go above and beyond that, but
But I'm gonna turn it around, okay? Now I'm at the top of the hill looking down on the hill. We had Carbone's property on the back end of Lake Wentworth. It was a 5-acre parcel, scun right off. It's just where the tornado went through. The ground was bare for years. The guy ran out of money. The ground was rolling right into Lake Wentworth at that point. Nothing ever happened. Now we're talking about a parcel on the hill that may be way up on a ridge line that somebody's cut some trees. This proposal right here is at 20,000 square foot. That's less than 150 by 150. If we had a 5-acre
Actually,
parcel, it'd be 225,000 square feet.
This is super specific. I would just say you can't cut the trees on the ridge. There has to be a backdrop to your house.
That's not live free or die in New Hampshire,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, no, I agree with you.
There's
It's not.
There's another problem. Are we trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist?
No, I can drive you, and I've done this, and I gave Matt some pictures of, if you drive over toward Guilford and Meredith, and you look on those hills, there are places where it's just big white houses and scalped.
No,
If they had left some trees on the ridge and gone away from the whites, it would not be ugly.
We've all heard people say, this is ugly, that's ugly, I wish they had
I
never
used a
done that.
bad word, ugly is not fair.
It's in my
Yeah.
eye also, Vaughn. But I was just thinking that I think it was 12 years I was on the ZBA, 12 years I was on the Concom, never once ran in, with one exception, to an issue of view shed intrusion. That became something that we had to look at as a complaint to the town or part of an application or an objection to an application for a variance. Only the one time. I've
Only the one time I remember too.
well,
But you wouldn't need a variance, because
no, someone was applying for a variance and someone said they shouldn't get it because they're gonna wreck my view
Yeah, they
shed.
were arguing against the building in the view shed that wasn't an established view shed, but they said in the master plan that called on these places that were view sheds of Wolfeboro, but they don't have any real
They don't really exist. No, they're not real.
Right.
I agree with you. I don't see this as pressing an issue, but maybe it should, but I don't see this as pressing an issue as the inclusionary zoning or the parking or the light, even the lighting for that matter. Even the lighting issue.
I see it as more similar to the lighting issue, where it just destroys the character of the town.
So when you look at the ridges, we talked about where are the ridges in Wolfeboro?
Well, they're
If
the
you look,
tops.
if you look south, the ridges are in New Durham.
Well, for instance, Sugar Hill, you know, that crests up there, and then there's, what is it, Granite Hill, and there are all these little hills that you see the tops of.
Right.
And
Well,
if you had left some trees behind,
You can see that
it would
from
be-
Alton when it's lit
Yeah.
at nighttime. What did Hausman call it? Battlestar Galactica?
Peter's got something.
Remember Hausman called it Battlestar Galactica?
Go ahead, Peter.
I think really the issue of, you know, what is allowed in the view shed is something which you really need to look at practically. In other words, if I go and I clear cut a ridge top, it looks ugly for a year or two, but then very quickly the vegetation grows in and it is not brown, or else it is the color of everything else during the particular season. I think the issues that we really are talking about are, I think, what Vaughn is talking about, which is associated with something, and I don't mean to say it's a bad place, but Sugar Hill is something which stands out from a large distance. It is bright white, and it ends up being something that if it was in earthy tones, that would make a difference. It wouldn't just jump out at you. You'll actually also find that dark colors are actually better for those people living in New Hampshire, because you actually get some heating during the winter, which goes into the wood, and therefore there's actually a heat benefit from a dark colored siding. And so I think it is, the idea that you can't cut a tree on your ridge line, I think, is misguided. But I think that the coloration and the way that buildings are presented is more of an issue.
Thank you.
Okay, how do folks want to proceed? I mean, we started out, Vaughn, when you first started out, you suggested that we sort of try the friendly approach.
say that,
Getting-
well, I was
getting
looking at the simple
information.
version of Newfound, because it was very
Yeah,
simple.
right, the information that you had forwarded to us. Maybe that's sort of the one way of approaching this initially. Anyone else?
Think of the planner. Think of how he's gonna try to enforce this situation, because he's gonna be dealing with this, and I don't see it.
I don't think we should table this without just and let it just go
But-
away, but on the other hand, I
And I
don't
think
think
it
should
was
be
in the
pressing.
master plan.
It was in the master plan, in the natural resources section.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think
Yes,
it's-
in the natural resources chapter.
It's been on our work list for a long time.
Yes, it has been.
And leave it up to the implementation committee to assign responsibility and let that party deal with it.
Okay, well, let's take a look at where we are with projects.
Okay.
Okay? And see what we can come up with. Okay, I mean, I sense some divided enthusiasm here. So we
Don't
will,
look at me for enthusiasm.
what?
Don't look at me for enthusiasm.
No, I said it was divided. Okay, so,
Mapping and find the hill tops? You know,
Do a topographic analysis, yep, we can.
sort of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, one of the
Yeah.
things I thought was
yeah,
a buffer on either side of the ridge line. Would be relatively easy to generate.
That's what I was thinking. It doesn't need to be so complicated.
right. Yeah, let us give some more thought to this and
It really doesn't mean you can't cut your trees, we just don't want you to take the very top ones.
Well,
I
don't
think
know.
we're
I think
gonna
that's an
need to-
intrusion on private property rights.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't-
sorry. I really do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
I don't know how you go in there and look at somebody's property and say, this is what's been done. I mean, we don't have that in us to do that. I mean, somebody goes and cuts up there, now somebody's like, okay, I'm gonna send Matt up on the hill to that guy's property to go check out his woodlot that he cut up there.
Okay, well, that's why I think we need more information, because that, I'm not sure that is how this would be implemented.
Well, I'm hearing two concerns. One is a visual impact from afar, and then one is as a result of the building, you know, color and look, and then the other is the cutting of the trees itself. And they almost, while they're related, I think they could be the result of two very different projects. And,
Right.
you know, I don't know that we're talking about an architectural standard. I think the basis of this really was a cutting standard. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in talking about it more. But I think I can start by putting together an idea of where these areas are, perhaps, where the ridge lines are, and then the board will have more information to make a decision
Okay,
on.
well, and I need to dig out my
Yeah,
extensive
yeah, I mean,
site review notes. Okay. All right, I put that on the list. So we're tabling it to
Yeah.
get more information.
Yeah, I don't know what information we're looking for. Can you help me out there?
Topography.
Topography analysis.
And, you know, to address the concerns you folks are bringing up, to see if that's what this really does.
So the next question I have is, how did this end up on our agenda? Do we get complaints, multiple complaints? Or I know that there was the one letter about a month ago, the one letter, and I would not wish to think that we are making all this because of one letter.
No, it's actually, as Vaughn mentioned, it's been on our work program for quite some time.
I know it was on our
And
work.
it's also on the natural resource master plan.
Right,
So the view shed, which we discussed there, is something that should be discussed by planning board.
yeah.
I think that complaint, though, did bring it back onto the priority list. I think there's no question about that, but it is in those other documents.
Yeah, but the
So
complaint,
back to the letter, it pointed out a property, and I want to go into this further because I think it's important. If we're going to make an example out of something, let's find out what the example was. Was there any violations?
The lighting violation that was identified?
The property that was identified, were there any violations?
I don't believe that the light that's there is a violation. It's certainly not dark sky compliant, but I also didn't go to the property to look at whether it was a floodlight or not. I saw the photos, I didn't see photos.
That's not there was two parts of that letter, the light and then the clear cutting.
Right, but the clear cutting is not a violation.
That's what I'm asking, and that's what we're cruxing this on right
Yeah.
here. And I just want to make everybody clear, we're responding to one letter from somebody that says something. Now listen, I know that's in the resources chapter, but he just said that's what brought it back up, okay? That's why I'm asking, was there a violation? And there wasn't a violation. So we're responding to something that wasn't a violation.
That's not what I'm responding to. I'm responding to a long-standing issue that the planning board has been trying to address for years. I don't even know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the letter that was...
I know, but I don't know. I'm
that
saying
was-
it's been an issue.
I remember having a discussion, and it has to have been a year ago, where we said that we would relook at this. So
I remember
it's
saying
not, it's not the most recent letter or violation or not. It is,
Well, that's what the planner just said,
I
so...
remember that also.
well, it isn't in my mind, and I helped set the
Yeah,
agenda,
so I guess I'm sorry, I'm just speaking for myself. That's what brought it up recently in my mind. because that letter came in. But I understand that it's been on the work plan for some time.
This has, you were right, Kathy, this came up a year or so ago, and I remember
Yeah,
having the same objections then that I have now.
okay.
So,
Okay, all right, well, I put this on the list for more information.
Yeah, but late in the year.
All I'm gonna do though,
Next year, or the
Probably-
year after, how about that?
Yeah,
all I'm gonna do is generate a topographic, a basic analysis, and that's it.
okay, but I want to get some history together as
Okay.
to what, I mean, why this has come up, okay? Okay, the charrette update.
I'll be quick about the next three if I can just do all three together.
briefly would be great.
Yes.
The Plan New Hampshire charrette was delayed. I did get a report on this a few months ago. It was originally scheduled for May. The Heritage Commission had asked me to check in with the folks that are running the charrette Plan New Hampshire, and I've had a few conference calls with them over the last 3 months. We're proposing to continue moving forward with the charrette, and I want to get the date for you. I did announce this date before, but I just want to substantiate it. And we'll be doing a hybrid approach, much like we're doing these meetings. We'll try to have the same quality charrette activity, but also have a go-to-meeting option, have an in-person option, and potentially extend the charrette to 3 days rather than the 2 that were originally planned. The charrette dates will be the first weekend in October. Those dates are, right now, the 2nd and the 3rd, which is a Friday and a Saturday. But that may potentially include October 1st, which is a Thursday as well, but will be more focused on kind of the internal side of things than anything, rather than the public events. I wanted to mention it to the board tonight because I wanted to see if, you don't have to tell me right now, but if there are any concerns about the activity related to safety or anything like that, I believe that we can get the same input that we would have gotten with a full in-person event. We'll also be doing some surveys as well to get out to people in advance in the event that they can't attend the event. We'll be doing a visual walking tour. Community TV doesn't know this yet, but we're going to be working with Community TV to try and put together a video documenting the different sites and the opportunities that exist in the charrette area. And we'll get that out to stakeholders who may or may not be able to attend the event in person or online. More details to come on all of this, but I did want to check in that Plan New Hampshire and I had agreed to at least proceed with the activity at this point in time, rather than delaying it to another year. We think it's possible to do it and still get a high-quality product out of it in the October month. The non-conforming structures update, I've mentioned at a prior meeting that we may have an issue with having non-conforming structures go through the special exception process for dimensional relief. I had further conversation with legal counsel about that. There is no issue, not a problem. Our existing process is fine. It's not clear in New Hampshire law, but council sees no issue with the way that we do it. We've done it that way for a long time. Again, this issue was derived from the fact that special exceptions are generally considered to be use-related relief. However, our special exceptions for non-conforming structures are really a dimensional relief mechanism. And again, the statute is pretty clear, it's for uses only, but council felt that despite that language, it was still okay to provide special exception relief for dimensional changes to non-conforming structures. And lastly, I just wanted to update you on a few upcoming projects that will be coming before you at your August meeting. We'll have a Brewster Academy project that will actually be coming in September, but we'll also be having the Cary Beach stormwater management and parking lot improvements, an accessory dwelling unit application, and also a further boundary line adjustment for the Romney properties out on Claflin Lane, in the Greenleaf area, rather. Those are 3 projects that will have public hearings at the beginning of August, with the Brewster Academy project to come in September. And then one other brief update. I try to keep this on your radar, but the Calden Farm development is proceeding quite nicely. We just did our 9th site inspection up there, so if you have a chance to go up there and take a look at the road, it's in pretty good shape. It's really coming together nicely. So we don't know that they'll be complete this year fully with the road, but they're pretty close to it. So we're hoping for some lots to become available up there, which would be really, really exciting. Hopefully in the coming year or so. And that's all.
Yeah, well, accessory dwelling,
Yes, you'll have an accessory dwelling unit application for 49 Center Street, which was a former multifamily some years ago that was converted to a half commercial, half residential structure. You'll see an application to convert the bottom floor into an accessory dwelling unit. And I would just say, not to bias it, but should be the model for what we look for in accessory dwelling unit applications. Once you see it, you'll see exactly what I mean. It's very, very well done. So you'll see that application at your August meeting.
Okay, and just as a follow-up to Mr. Zimmerman's discussion earlier, I mean, I think we should get some input on the fast food drive-through restaurants, and I'm wondering if we want to have a public meeting on the parking ordinance, if maybe we might do both issues at the same time.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long session, don't you think?
Not,
You really want to roll the two of them together, or rather than doing them separately?
well, I was just trying to think that, I mean, he asked us if we would get some other input.
Yeah, I think we need to have a public meeting about that, sure.
Or do it at a separate time.
I think separate would be better.
You do? Okay.
Because then you'll get just the people who want to focus on the issue
Yep.
Okay.
one at a time.
Okay, so separate time.
Yeah, and if we get no groundswell of the public here on drive-through restaurants, it sort of answers the question right there.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we can put that on an agenda, right? Yeah, okay. All right, okay. On to the minutes. June 2nd.
I have some things. Page 3, paragraph at the top states Mike Hodder stated. Next line down, change the word application to applicant. Page 6, about 1/3 the way up from the bottom, Mike Hodder asked if the Helen Neri ROW, insert the word was. Sorry for that, that just bothered me. That's all I had for there.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the June 2nd minutes with the correction.
So moved.
I'll second the motion. Okay, roll call vote. Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
John Thurston?
Abstain.
Mike Hodder?
Yes.
Von Dugan?
Yes?
Susan Replier?
Yes.
Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Kathy Barnard, I vote in favor. The next set of minutes, July 7th.
Page 7. Top of the page. Third typed line down, the only means of expressing concern over a project is to change the word veto to read vote not to recommend.
Okay.
That's all I have on
To recommend. Okay, and I just had one on page 4, down near the bottom of the page where it talks about Richard Massey. His last name is M-A-S-S-E. That's the only correction I have. I'll make a motion to accept these minutes as corrected. Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Peter Goodwin?
Yes.
John Thurston?
I didn't get them, but yes.
Mike Hodder?
that. Yes.
Von Dugan?
Yes?
Susan Replier?
I was not present.
Okay. Brad Harriman?
Yes.
Kathy Barnard, I'll vote yes. Anything else, folks? And Mary Jane, I think you really did a great job. Are you still over there, Mary Jane? Thank you very much for the minutes. I think you did a nice job.
Different font.
Yeah, yes, a different,
Font.
yeah. Throws you off, great. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded.
When is
Peter
the next
Goodwin.
What's the next meeting?
Okay, John Thurston.
Tuesday in August.
Mike Potter.
Yes.
Von Dugan.
Yes, she says yes.
Susan Ripley here. Adjourn. Brad Harriman says yes, and Kathy Barnard, I vote in favor of adjournment. Hey, folks, thank you very much.